to the July 23rd, 2018 Ahrb meeting. We skipped a session 2 weeks ago, so I have a couple of items from that, from the last meeting's agenda, which we'll start with 49 Clinton Avenue, Master School, right here.
How you doing?
Good.
Craig Dunn. I'm the supervisor of engineering and maintenance for Master School. We're looking to install 3 storage sheds on the property. 8 by 10s, prefabricated, no fixed foundation, be put on cinder blocks, no electric, no plumbing. It's storing bicycles and toys. We have 9 faculty families who live in these buildings. We're just looking to tidy the place up and have an area for them just to storage into.
Did you provide a cut sheet of the,
Yeah,
Yeah, it
should have been in the front.
Dan, do you have a copy of that? I may have misplaced mine.
They didn't.
Okay, yes.
That first page.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe the last time you were on the agenda, which was about a month ago, we had a neighbor here, had some questions about some issues. I think you answered, or sorry, Ed was here, Ed Manley was here, responded about the use of the sheds, and I think you just commented on that. But neighbor had some other concerns, which I think it would be in everyone's best interest to, address, not here, but as neighbors. Otherwise, I see no issue with this. Anyone else? Any comments? Any other neighbors here tonight? No. Okay, motion to approve this application is submitted. I have a second. Yeah, your seconds. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
3 Eldridge Place.
Good evening. I'm This is a continuation from last time we met regarding the siding. I wrote some new pictures of the neighbors around my house, what they have, the idea that I actually got.
Sure.
This is exactly same quality, same product, and same design.
So is your, just question, and take the mic if you would, if you're gonna
Yeah,
come.
sure.
Your house is the one, as you go up Eldridge from Broadway, I couldn't see the numbers, it's sort of elevated.
You make a left, a
You
second.
kind of make that sharp left and
Yeah.
it's at the end.
Yes, it's a
Okay.
private house, that's only 3 houses in there.
Yeah. I was up there, I thought that was it, I didn't know if that was a private drive or not, so I didn't go down there, but I did look at the house, or rather, it's quite difficult to see the house. It's pretty well concealed.
And this is a private drive, and it's dead end, so, that's what it does.
I don't know if anyone else was able to make it out, but please go ahead.
So basically, we installed an over existing siding. I thought of recondition, it's impossible because it's pretty much damaged. It would need to be removed, and it's got 2 different sidings, so there's no consistency, there's no, and that's where I got the idea from the neighbors to actually install a new siding over. I know there's all kinds of siding out there. I would love to get something that is the highest, quality, but for now, that's all I can afford, and that's what I can do eventually in the near future, probably, we'll go to better quality and change the windows, because even the windows are different, but that's what it is for now.
So I think given how concealed the house is, it's neither visible from Broadway or really even from Eldridge, except maybe from certain perspectives. I think I'm going to ease back a little bit on pushing on the aluminum or vinyl, but there is 1 or 2 details that I think you need to employ, and the first is you know, the channel section you showed for the corner, which is sort of a flimsy piece. It generally, when people do use vinyl here or there, they put in a AZEC trim or something like that. It's a minor expense, but I think adds a bit of relief and a proper termination for the siding, and it's more in keeping with the type of detail that you would see on the shiplap sided house, whether it's wood or vinyl or some other material. So I'd like you to make that change and further.
Did you understand what he was
Yeah, I
saying?
did. We thought of that. The reason why we're going with this exactly because the way it's made in order for that vinyl to be installed properly, not to have any water leak inside, it is uniform as I presented. Because the channel goes around the side and it sort of slopes inside of the corner lead, and that's how it really seals out completely. The cabinet around the window, with the existing windows, if I was to use any other material, it would involve to install another piece in the window sash to sort of wrap it around, and that would shorten the window sash if I add anything. So by doing capping, which there's a picture, if I showed you, it's exactly the same thing, that would seal the actual window exactly. If I was to change the windows, then yes, it would be a good idea because I would recess and I would use that as a window trim, and that window will sit on it. But being that I'm not changing the windows, to do any other piece on top of it, it'll sort of block the window.
Sorry, I'm just not budging on the two issues that we brought up. I mean, we're proposing that you meet us partway. We're relenting on the vinyl option, but not on the trim consideration. I think there isn't any reason that you can't conform to that detail if plenty of other houses are able to get a waterproof envelope using building paper and vinyl siding and the same kind of trim detail. I fail to understand why you.
Are you referring only to the casing around the window, or are you referring to the corners
The
of
corners.
the house?
I'm referring to the corners of the house.
Corners of house.
Firstly, I mean, we can address them one at a time.
I see.
But I think we'll start with the corners of the house. I don't see any reason why this vinyl material terminating in a vertical trim board can't be a water, you can't provide a water-resistant envelope. I mean, your waterproofing membrane is behind that.
Okay.
So I
No, I
it's just,
understand.
that's just not the case. I mean, I know that's the system that they want to sell you, but
I understand. Well, I'm sure that verification could be done. However, the channel, the J channel that goes around the siding, that's part of the siding. But the beam itself, the corner, which is L-shaped, that I'm sure could be replaced with something else. But the J channel, it is part of, because the
All we are
corner siding has
talking
the
about,
siding.
all we are talking about is about the corner. It's the
Okay,
corner.
the post, you're talking about the post wrapping.
The corner, yes.
Okay, that, yes, that could be, absolutely, yeah, the J channel is something that goes to the side.
and you want to address the window?
The trim of the window.
Yeah.
But we are talking about the detail, but we are not seeing the detail.
Well, no, but we haven't seen the detail. He's just showed us photographs, but that's,
That's fine. That's fine. Based on visibility, it's fine.
it's hard to tell what that is.
It's minimal.
So Brent,
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the whole. I mean, is that anything that goes around, or is that?
This is the neighbor's house.
I think so.
Yeah, so, we'll keep the window detail, replace your trim boards, your fascia, your corner boards with, an AZAC that, is proud of the shiplap, vinyl.
I understand.
And, if you're fine with that, any other comments?
That's it.
No? Okay, motion to approve this with the stipulation that the corner and any other trim material be replaced with a 5/4 AZAC or similar material. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, your seconds. Unanimous, okay. We'll note that, we'll mark this up on the building department sheet, and then you contact the building department. Thanks. 28 Brookside Lane, please.
this is the existing plan. There's a little gable here that goes out onto like a roof deck, and that's where I'm sort of extending over here and over here, just off the footprint of the garage. And this will be the new second floor, so it's kind of a master suite with a little reading area and a master bath here, walk-in closet, and a few windows, and then digital ventilation. I was thinking about doing metal roof, but my insurance policy excludes, hail damage, so I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna do dimensional shingles, in the color that you see there. So these are the existing elevations. It's a pretty modest little house, and it has a couple layers of siding. I'm taking all that siding off down to the cedar planks. And I'm gonna put back the hardy system over that, including the paper and the ornament system. The other thing I'm doing is just putting a large kind of picture in the back. So, this is some of the more technical information. Actually, the garage door is kind of a brown, so that it just doesn't get too monotonous. And the door will be also kind of the same kind of like a saddle leather brown color. These are the pictures of the fences. This will be the front-facing fence, it'll be 4 feet high and have the 60% capacity, and then this is the taller privacy fence on the other 3 sides. Just some detail, just to give you an idea of what it takes. So at the corners, it's giving some dimensionality. I'm gonna have like a 3-inch sort of batten right there, and then these are the sort of the smaller, I think they're about 2 inches vertical battens. And then like this is sort of showing you stand here and look out. And that's it. It's a pretty straightforward proposal.
I appreciate the clarity of your drawings. I assume you did these yourself, you an architect?
I am.
Um, That's all very clear. I think it's well done. I just had the one question about the large window at the back. Am I looking at a fixed picture window with a muntin, or am I looking at just a simplified double-hung window?
So it's a fixed window.
Okay.
It comes too low to the ground really to be a kind of double hung thing, so it's really, it's fixed.
And so with the existing windows that you're maintaining, your plan is to match the muntin profiles?
Yeah, what I'm gonna
Other
do with the
window
new
sash
windows, I'm going to
profiles.
match the existing windows, because otherwise it'll be so rather than replace everything, that's way beyond my budget. So these, you can see here in the front, they gotta have the, I think I drew 4 and I drew 3 for each little space. 2. It might be 3 per A instead of 2, but whatever it is, I'm gonna.
So the windows, how mountains is simulate divided lights, SDL?
Sorry, say it one time.
The windows will be SDL, as simulated divided lights?
They will be, that's
Yeah.
what the existing one is.
Okay.
as well, yeah.
I agree with Michael, the presentation is very clear. I think just a question, it's not just a comment on the pitch, on the exaggerated pitch on the front of the addition.
Exaggerated pitch,
The front elevation,
this,
yes.
yeah.
Any particular reason that you didn't respect the existing? For some reason, it works nicer on the rear elevation than the front elevation.
It's actually pretty close to the existing pitch.
I checked.
Checked it.
Checked. But anyway, if there is an intent, a design intent, I'll respect the intent. It works nicer in the
So
rear
I'll tell you
elevation.
what it is. I'm really restricted by my existing second floor
Okay,
and the as-of-right 28-foot height. And to get something that looks well, it's a very narrow range there. Because if I start pulling it in, it starts to make my, the inside of my ceiling slanted. I go below 8 feet of my ceiling. I don't want to do that at the perimeter.
I'm just curious if it's a design intent more.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's, and the second thing I'm concerned about in the front elevation. See the front?
Yeah.
This detail here.
The,
Thanks to the, if you go to the page 812,
yeah,
anyway, so you have the shadows there.
that,
So that thing is gonna be a difficult problem,
to flash.
yes.
Yeah.
And thanks to the shade or the shadow, the snow is gonna accumulate. It's not gonna melt. So, just
Yeah,
extra careful on that.
Yeah,
But that's
fair point.
beside the
I'm sorry, I missed this.
Anyway, other than that, I think it's a great improvement. Materials that were selected. On the pitch, I will flatten it a little bit, but I'll let you decide on that one. Other than that,
I don't totally agree. I think somehow changing the direction of the joint of the siding allows that piece to kind of playfully work in an exaggerated pitch. So yeah, but, so whatever you decide. Any other questions, comments? All good. All right, looks good. Motion to approve this application as submitted.
I'll second it.
Yeah, your second, unanimous. Okay, good luck, thanks. 28 Chestnut Ridge Way.
Thank you.
I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do.
Well, just tell us, introduce yourself.
Okay, so
And-
I'm Karen Shore, and I live at 28 Chestnut Ridge Way. I have put in all the information you
Yeah.
need for a fenced-in area.
Excessive, I understand, but, for a fence, but, shortly this will no longer be an AHRB, item. I think it's pretty clear. My only question is, and I think the drawing, I think I understand from the drawing, but from the photograph of, you have a retaining or a small wall in the back. Are you going on top of the wall? Are you going in toward of the wall? What is it?
In about
In
maybe
the
a
wall.
foot or so
Okay.
from the wall, from that retaining wall. So I ended up doing another survey on the property. And it was really surprising because it ended up that what I assumed was my neighbors were
Yeah.
here, their property. It's not actually. So, but I guess it was just done that way long before I moved in. So anyway, the fence will be very much on my property, very much away from what is my tree and, that retaining wall.
It's funny how often that's the case.
It was surprising, there was a blue flag that was put on your property, I don't know if you saw it, that was right near their driveway, that I had no idea was considered my property. I mean, they're maintaining that with their lawn and all of that, so it was news to me.
Dan, any questions, issues?
Neighbors comment.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. Is there a neighbor here who would like to comment about the proposal? Please come on up.
Sure, hi, yeah, so, I'm Karen's neighbor, I live next door,
Would you introduce yourself just for the record?
Oh, sure, I apologize.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Jamie Robinson. So
Thanks.
we live next door, and, you know, my understanding, looking at the plans and talking to Karen, that this fence will serve as an enclosure to use as a dog run. So I don't know if Karen's got her dog yet, or she's planning on getting one. And it's gonna be on the side of the property, the side yard that's adjacent to my house.
Mhm.
It's gonna run from, my understanding, from the front of the house all the way to the back. So my concern is, considering it's right on, you know, the side yard there, and that the dog will be, you know, spending some time there during the day, you know, that amount of time to be determined. You know, any disturbance it might create for us, specifically, my husband works from home, and his office is right there, my young daughter's bedrooms are right there. So, you know, I'm just, that's my concern. Additionally, and I don't know, actually, sorry, I submitted a letter, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read it, or.
I'm sorry, I don't believe I
Yeah,
received
no.
that letter. Sure, you can, please.
So it
Thank you.
outlines my concerns in there. You know, and even if, you know, whatever Karen's intention is with her dog, my, you know, concern is for the future, you know, someone else may move into that house in a few years and, you know, may end up putting, you know, 5 dogs there, or I, you know, don't know how long they, you know, leave a dog there. Especially with my husband working from home, you know, he's on the phone all day. And additionally, in line with the question that you had, there's about a 4-foot retaining wall, on or about the property line, so adding a 6-foot fence on top of that, from our side, from our view, is basically be like a 10-foot wall.
That's why I asked it. It's
Yeah,
actually going on the
that's-
ground. It's not going on top of the wall.
I guess Karen was saying about a foot off, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it'll be the appearance of, you know, that, so.
Oh, okay, so, sorry, you're,
I think I took some
you're
photos.
you're the higher,
I'm the
you're the
highest.
higher ground.
Yes,
Oh,
we're
okay,
the
I assume the otherwise, just from the way it's taken, I assume it was,
Yeah, it's fine.
yeah.
So I actually outlined a, you know, maybe a proposed compromise in there, would be possibly putting, the dog run in the back of the property. So our properties, we're adjacent, the back of the properties are adjacent to a wooded area, a wooded buffer, and then behind that is the Hunter's Run townhome complex.
Mhm.
So I thought maybe if it was in the back, it would be less, you know, possibly less disruptive. You know, we wouldn't have as much of an issue with the 10-foot wall. Well, no, the look of the, you know, the retaining wall 4 feet
Oh,
with
okay.
near it, yeah, no. The 6-foot fence.
Yeah, I understand I mean, I think that, there's a couple issues. One, the first issue is that it's a compliant application. And I think a fairly reasonable one, even if you didn't have dogs, and you just wanted some privacy, or, you know, it would still be a reasonable request. I think that if you have a suggestion and your neighbor is happy and willing to accommodate that, then should be between the two of you. It's not something that we would necessarily regulate. I think if there's, you know, if the dog turns out to be a menace, then you should call the building department and make a noise, or call the police department and make a noise complaint. I understand the issue of noise, and, you know, my neighbors have a dog, and I live on Ashford, and it's pretty noisy, and I work from home some days, and it's something that one just has to contend with when you have neighbors close by. But I think if there's an issue about, you know, some real complaint about the noise from the dog, then you can file a complaint. Yeah, please.
I just want to say, as I said to Jamie, because I talked to her about it, I have no intention whatsoever to leave my dog outside.
Yeah.
We have coyote, we have fox, we have skunks.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving my dog outside. I owned an Akita for 14 years. Jamie moved in, we had the Akita there. I'm an incredibly responsible dog owner. I have a letter from a neighbor, that's what a responsible dog owner is. I don't want a dog outside barking. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with her. I wouldn't like that either. And I promised her that was not gonna happen, and I know it won't happen, because that's not what I want to do with my dog. So I can't reassure you enough that the dog is not gonna be left out to bark and disturb you in your turn. just to say that I'm a responsible dog owner, but as I'm getting older, in the winter, in the ice, I want to have the ability.
Yeah, sure, no, we
to let the
understand.
dog out.
Thank you.
May I make one possible reasonable solution, maybe that we can compromise? Instead of, since the dog run is gonna be quite long, instead of starting at the front of your house where Doug's office is, could you maybe start it at the back of your house and go to the backyard? And that would, if you look at the drawing there on the survey, that would still give the dog some different amount of, area to run around in. It wouldn't be right outside Doug's office.
But I don't think the dog's gonna be staying out there barking in front of Doug's office.
I know, but it will be spending, some time there. I know one of the suggestions I made about possibly putting it on the other side of your house, and your concern was you work from home and your clients come in from there, so I know you were concerned about
It's
your
also,
clients in business.
well, it's also that again, if I go along the woods, it's going to be more area for,
Yeah, no, I see. You only have 10 feet on one side, and you've got 23 on the other, so.
I guess my feeling is, I know that you're saying you're not gonna leave your dog there, I just kind of feel like, why build a dog run that isn't at least partially your intention, or the intention of someone who may move in the house after.
I don't know about anyone who moves after me, but
that's just my
I
concern.
do know that, I really want it for ice, for cold, for freezing cold. Taking my Akita out 3 times a day during the winter was really getting hard on me. And that's really all I want it for. When it's a puppy, I'll probably go out and throw a ball, but as it gets bigger, that's the only reason I want it. This dog is not a dog that wants to stay outside and be alone and bark anymore. It's just,
Thank you. Are there other neighbors here? Are you the other neighbors?
No,
No.
they're here,
Oh,
they're
okay.
accompanying me, but just to get back to one more point, back to if you're not gonna leave the dog there, would you consider the possibility of just starting it towards the back of your house, moving back about, 8-10 feet, so it wasn't right outside his office?
it's a much
And
shorter fence if I
But
do it that
since
way.
they're not, it actually would save you money, and then your dog, since it's not gonna be in there very often, you're not planning, then it would be, you wouldn't need as much.
I encourage this kind of conversation, but not in this place.
We had
And
it.
so I will just say, just to move along, I want to reiterate the first point I made, which is that this is a very reasonable request. I would like to move on with this, and I encourage you to continue this conversation, and if you decide to move the fence back, we'll leave you some leeway with the building department. I don't think you have to come back here. If you decide to include more of the backyard, that's also fine, just resubmit it, but you don't have to come back, as long as you don't change the height or the style or anything like that. If you do one of those latter 2 things, resubmit, but otherwise, if you work out some other arrangement between now and when the fence goes up about the exact location, that I'll leave that up to you all to complete.
Yeah, just what is the material the fence will be made out of? It wasn't on the plan.
Vinyl, white
And
vinyl,
what is it gonna look
a
like?
picket fence,
So is that spaces in between?
little spaces.
And so it's just gonna be a 6-foot high tall picket box? Thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, motion to approve this fence as submitted. The applicant may decide to push back the section at the front some number of feet, and if she does, this approval includes that minor change.
Just so I know, do I come to the office?
Well,
and
just a moment. Do I have a second? Yeah, your seconds. It's unanimous. Okay, it's approved. Thank you.
I come and get a permit from you in the office? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
We'll email you.
You'll get a notification. Uh-oh. Changing it up. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a couple different elevations between the elevator and the existing transition, and then the proximity to the unit on the third floor of the existing building, it seemed like a no-brainer to add a deck onto that unit and infill that space and kind of balance it off, so it's a little choppy. So,
This level.
I retained Chuck to come up with a couple concepts to make that connection and add on that deck. And, we filed that, there's a gable presentation where I show you that kind of cleans up these lines and connects to the buildings a little bit better. Chuck?
Architect or Gianna, working part. So this is the current Steve, this is the approved Steve, for reference. And just a couple of years back, so remembering about the sort of gap that we had, goes up a couple of stories, and then there's a small sun deck, and then up above, a slight view of elevator machine room, and then basically sort of C-channel type cornice that comes in right at the top of the terracotta and back up, you see how that setback helps to preserve the small center of the second floor unit of the building. Again, so as Bart mentioned, and the building starts to break down, this kind of possibility emerged of adding a deck or terrace from the third floor of the old building, so basically this unit here, slightly higher than the roof level at the top of the exit stair. So this is the proposed solution to that, or a version where it's on top of the back, we sort of shift from a hipped roof on the new building to a gable roof, so it starts to give a tighter definition to that slot of space between the two buildings. And then, as you can see coming across, it's a little hard to see, color to see them in perspective. But then the deck comes out. In fact, what we do is we're proposing to come down 2 steps, so about 14 inches off of the third floor to kind of bring it down. Let's see here then. The expression of it is in keeping, I think, with the intention was to keep with some of the language that we've been developing of this sort of C-channel type industrial cornice. This one is expressed as a sort of taller version, almost a kind of complete girder version of it that acts, I think, as both a cornice that sort of caps off that central gap area, and also as a kind of bridging element that spans across from the old building to the new building. What you see here, some of the specifics are dictated by the geometry of the roof slope. But basically, this is and some of this is a kind of iterative exercise to get the right proportions between the sort of spanning elements, wanting that to be not too deep, and then wanting the deck below not to be too tall, right? So put it a little bit, basically right at the eve line there. There's a planter proposed, 18 inches deep, and then the railing height would be about 18 inches, and then the remaining 2 feet would be glass rail. So that's what this line up here represents across the top. And then down on the kind of sun deck, as part of the cover, we'll see that in a minute. So we've got the wood trellis element there to give some texture. It's not really showing the plants, but the intent is to grow trellis. So then
element, the structure comes to the top of the window, basically. We brought it down a little bit here in front, but we're trying to preserve this window into the second floor unit for some additional light and air. And then more of a kind of straight-on view, again, with the elements, more clearly defined gap. And then a couple of comparative views. You know, as you see it now, it's starting to get framed up. Most of the actual views, I mean, these are, of course, real views, I guess, if you're standing in the parking lot across the street. So, you know, you certainly can see these, but I suppose a more typical view is one like this, where you, in this case, under the proposal, you would see the end gable, which would be the terracotta coming up to the, along the rake of the roof, and then, you know, you get a little bit of a glimpse as you kind of walk down the street of the setback area at the entrance. So this is the current version, this is the proposed version. And then likewise here, and the kind of view as you come up from the train station and up Palisade, Chestnut. This would be proposed, you know, it's a minor, you see the, you know, the slight difference here, instead of being just windows, there'd be a transom and a sliding door out to the sort of landing for the steps, but one that would sort of match the proportions and the kind of wantons of the SDLs of the double hung windows. There's the proposed and current, and then there it is, one I've included. Again, just for reference, line drawings, so you can see. Proposed, kind of, it's a little hard to see, but everything's been followed out for reference. And then on the other side, the north side, I wanted to show that as well. So there's the current and then proposed, just bring the master gable on the other half of the building as well, and then in that back corner.
Just to clarify, what's driving this is the want to have a deck coming off of the existing building on that third floor or fourth floor? Just no other constructability issues or?
It's sort of one of those opportunities, I guess, that presents itself once you're making the thing, you know, and it kind of appears so close, and it's like, well, something we should look at. I think, you know, and then once you take it on, I guess, then it's sort of what opportunities does that provide? I think it's given us, I feel, an opportunity to you know, maybe tighten up the gap between buildings and try to find the relationship between the new, the old, and then this sort of interstitial piece that's a little more clear. But it did, yes, answer your question. It came from
Just want to understand what's driving it.
an opportunistic, you know, I guess it's so far, you know, it's there all the time, building it, so.
No, it's fine. The difference between scheme D and F, it's the preferred, your preferred is F, right?
Yes, I think this is a newer, slightly newer version of.
So we have like in the packet this and this. Basically, you're going by this. Are we disregarding this, or this is a suggested?
Well, this, I guess, of the
This is the
two,
one
this
that
is-
you
that's
said.
the one that I've showed you, right?
And
It's a
how about,
slightly,
and what about this?
version.
What do we do with this?
we
It's
sort of-
it's suggested for us to
we sort of set
review.
it aside, I guess, I guess, and then in the interim, we sort of lean towards one, but I guess
It's
you
open
can
to-
see it, it's a,
I'll tell you my comment.
open question.
I think the common sense of having a deck is accepted, the argument for a deck is, and I kind of tend to prefer the D scheme and it's because opens up the second floor of the deck. It's kind of, this area here is too compressed here, too dark, and it's probably, if you put a garden there, roof garden, it's gonna be in shade most of the day. This one opens up a little bit and gives a little more light and air to that area. And I think it's more in tune with what's happening with these two volumes. But, I mean, you've done it for a reason, unless there is another, right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious if the other comments.
Take the mic if you're gonna come up.
Sorry, I'm curious if the other comments.
Yeah, maybe before we jump into that, I would like to point out that the intention for this whole project has always been to maintain as much of the original building as practically feasible, and make the most discrete connection to the new building. And I think that some initial ideas which were, they make sense in a schematic design phase where you just have a glass box that connects everything and everything is invisible, like stairs and elevators. And then you look at it a little more closely and you see that it needs to be more solid than glass, and that's fine. But I think that ultimately it's nice to have a deck on a unit, and if it didn't add almost another full story to the connector, I wouldn't be having this conversation. But I think that extra 8 feet or so that you're adding is taking away from the view of the existing building, which is, back to where we started, kind of the principal issue of this whole project. So from a conceptual standpoint, I'm completely against it. So I'll let my colleagues here debate the merits of the different scheme, but I don't think any of them, no matter how well done, really serve the purpose of what our overall intent is for this.
We can show that, although it sounds like Michael.
You're
objecting to either.
Is everybody objecting to this deck?
I'm not sure. We don't
I
talk
didn't
beforehand.
really think it was a big piece of mass that we're adding on. I thought it tied, right now, personally, the back building kind of dwarfs the front building, but we spent some time on this to try to connect the two. So here's, another
Right, so this is
concept
a
we
version
have.
of the other,
And
the other scheme that was.
I don't think it takes away from the old building or affects anybody in the old building.
I would have to say that adding that element, whatever it is, really begins to dematerialize that mass. The very simple connector is now kind of convoluted in my mind. That there was a real clear, kind of discrete little pocket. Now the pocket has its own rooftop deck that's adjacent to the elevator machine room and access to that deck on the front side of the building. And then it juts out a few feet over the top of that and creates another shadow line on that connector. So whatever the top element is, whether it's roofing material or whether it's the continuation of the infill, it loses a real simple clarity that was in the original plan. So I would have to agree with Michael. I think that although it would be nice to have the deck, I think it's not as simple as adding 2 or 3 feet. It looks like you're adding 10 feet onto the top of the building.
Yeah, if I look at the elevation markers, it's probably, somewhere between 8, 9 feet or so. I don't know, you tell us, but it's a lot, it's almost a whole story. And, if we were talking about putting a railing around the current roof,
Yeah.
you know, that's something, that's maybe a discussion we could have, but I,
And I also think this original roof line, this very simple, elegant roof line that mimics the existing building is very compelling. I know you may never exactly experience it that way unless you're flying over in a small drone, but there's something really eloquent about that connection and that visual connection that you've tried really hard to make on this project.
I don't have anything to add, I agree.
What I said before, I think that you can, the connector can absorb the extra feet. I think that the extra deck is perfectly fine. I'm not sure if this is the best solution, how to do it. I would still keep the original roofing, yeah, like the scheme F, what was before, trying to maintain not the gable roof, but yeah, I think it's fine. I don't know if it's the most successful connector in the top, but I think can be worked out. That's my opinion. I will probably walk again that area during the weekend and see if I'm missing something, but I think my opinion is fine.
So just to, so you would say that in either, in your case, it'd be better to keep the,
Yes,
the hip roof.
yes.
And then, what do you call it, it's better as it is than the original design.
Well, Brandon.
He's also, okay, that it's, that neither of the two sort of, is an improvement on the original.
That's,
yes, that's,
Yes.
And just a second, I think the principal point of this project was to try and maintain 75 as original as possible, right? We made some minor concessions on this, on Main Street, right? In terms of beautification for the storefront and some other minor things, but I don't think modifying to create a deck is worth impacting the existing building to the extent that it will dramatically increase the massing of the connection between what is existing and the new. I think having two separate elements, while it will be one overall building, having those two separate elements is almost standalone, but with a small connecting piece, is whimsical and really plays nicely with what the original intent was. This counteracts that entirely.
So basically you're saying no go on this deck, that's what I'm hearing, right? Or is there another way that this deck can be created?
not at that level,
You're saying the height is a problem?
correct?
Yeah, I think any change in any change in massing to the connector would be a no from me.
And if you see through, I mean, just throwing something out there, it says the deck elevation below the deck, is there's a void there, maybe it should be an open space below it too. Just not like the bridge.
say it again, can you say it?
If we take the mass, basically the elevator gap between this space here, right here, and where the deck starts, so if this was open, and you just had the deck at like 4 feet going over like a bridge, but it's open underneath, that'd be a different concept.
That sounds kind of funky to me.
I don't think that would.
I
I
wouldn't-
don't know how to do
wouldn't-
that.
I'm not gonna say it can't work, but your suggestion, I mean,
You're talking about putting a bridge in.
yeah, it sounds kind of weird, and it might it sounds likely to not
How
be
about,
successful, but I'll leave that up to you if you wanna test it out and bring it back to us.
How
I
about,
can't say you can't bring a new scheme to us, because you can, but I think I've been pretty clear about
You know, it's
my thoughts on
hard
it.
to see from this, but you're physically on the site. You can see how easily that this concept can be achieved and add value to the space.
I don't disagree with that at all. Actually, I'm sure it will add value to that unit, and I'm sure it's fairly easy to frame and put up, but that's not our question.
I'm just saying, I mean, look, you know, to me, you know, I mean, this building looks like it can go a story higher and still be in the right proportions, okay? So it was created as a right just because there was no other choice. But you can see the two buildings, how they relate to one another.
Bart, respectfully, we're not talking about a building that goes up another story, right? Because that's not what you have approved right now.
I'm just talking about the
So I don't know.
relationship of the two, and you're just talking about filling this little space here as far as being, you know,
You want to bring it to a vote? I don't know. There's really nothing else we can look at or talk about. Unless you want a continuation to the next meeting. My opinion.
The other thing that you might try, if you want to try it, is to, instead of bringing it forward on the extension, just pitch it, with the same pitch of the left side building roof. Just pitch it out, out to the sideline and make it straight. Let me see if I can. Just,
we did a version of that as well.
and
I guess we felt that the other one.
Deck's too small.
We felt that the other one was with the gable, so we did one where there was a gable, and then you came to the end, and then set back, but at the same pitch, almost like a little false sort of.
Right.
to it. It just seemed that in the end, the version where we just simply spanned it, was cleaner and less obtrusive, it didn't get this far forward, it was, receding more, it was just a cleaner, simpler solution, so that's the one we sort of went with.
okay. Continue this. Let them explore a little, a few options.
The applicant's option.
Yeah, we have neighbor.
I was just about to tell Bart how good it was looking. And the way it is, it really is something you notice, that connection between the two buildings. There's an old Bushman expression, which is save some honey for the honey dipper, which means don't get too greedy. Because, you gotta have the bees come back. And I think this is just a question of, if it was just a transparent railing on an existing roof, who cares, because you still see through, there's no shadow, but part of the sale of this addition is a kind of separate building with a hyphen connection, kind of a minor hyphen connection that you all talked about, is that the roof shape was sort of a little version of the roof shape on the original building, this jerkin head dormer thing, and to then start cladding up the little hyphen is working really well. The thing is looking good, it's just for a little, and you gotta change the offering plan, all this stuff has to happen, but basically, there is a noticeable visual change. I walk by there twice a day, and, it's, you notice that difference is, okay, that's great, it's working out, and there's, it's a little bit of light that gets through that slot to the next property, so, it just is reaching too far, as you guys have said.
So we'll leave it to you if you'd like to present another possibility, potentially a deck on that lower level, which I think you mentioned, something we could look at. But,
I'm not sure I understand what the lower level is.
well, the current height of the roof of the connector, if that is feasible for the lower floor.
How do you get there?
I don't know, if you don't give me a section, I can't exactly
I
point
know.
that out. If it doesn't work,
You
then,
wouldn't let me along the floor plates, it's 2.5 foot difference.
Use the microphone.
There's a 2.5 foot difference.
here's the thing, we're past that point. I think we've
You
been,
make a statement, that's not real, it's impossible to happen.
Can.
okay, so, well, this,
We're done.
yeah, okay, fine.
So,
Just trying to give you a, way to continue to look at it, if that's what you wanna do. You don't wanna look at it anymore? Great, fine, good, we don't have to deal with this anymore. Do we wanna vote on this, or do you, yeah.
Sounds like you
Make
voted
a
already.
motion to deny this application as submitted? Do I have a second?
second?
Brandon seconds.
Yeah, third.
Against? Yair? One hundred Main Street, please.
I'm Larry Blizzard. I reside at 12 Chestnut Street. My wife, we've been residents for 40 years. I'm a trustee of the Australia Historical Society, and tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Roxbury Historic District Committee. With me tonight is Mr. Steve Tilley. I want to read a statement, short statement. My purpose in appearing before you today is to request that you set a date for a public hearing to consider classifying the barn in back of 100 Main Street as an historic structure worthy of preservation. I'm also requesting that the date of the public meeting be any time after Labor Day, as most people will be away in August. Our ultimate goal for the barn is adaptive reuse, not simply preservation. Simple preservation implies a structure, the barn, standing as an empty shell, a relic. In reality, the barn should become a usable building. The preservationist wants to preserve the irreplaceable qualities of charm provided by the architectural style of a different area, but yet updated for contemporary use. So the first point I want to make is that I think we should, instead of just saying preservation, I want to use the term adaptive reuse, repurposing. The second point I want to make is that over the months past, there's been too much discussion back and forth about the age of the barn. The barn is an historic structure. It appears on a map that I have in my possession of 1894. It has a long history with the village, which I won't go into now. More importantly, the barn is an integral part of an ensemble of buildings essential to the maintenance of charm of the aqueduct downtown area. The barn is a reminder of Dobbsbury's past, how things came to be as they are. It gives an added dimension to the experience of living in the village. In other words, we should think not of the barn as an isolated relic, but as part of an ensemble, a grouping of buildings which you pass as you walk along the aqueduct, and which gives you a heightened experience, a step back into time, an escape from the present worries, and is beneficial and attractive to large numbers of people. This is not a new concept. I'd like to now read the honor roll of buildings which have been repurposed in Dobbsbury and which have added to the charm of the village. Basically, most of the buildings on Main and Cedar Street, the barn at 12 Chestnut Street, the aqueduct overseer's house, Steve Tilley's architectural offices, the Dobbsbury Historical Society headquarters, otherwise known as the Meat House, the old library building, Bruce Richards and Kim Catatoni's residence, the Oceana Press building, which has received much praise, Esterwood at the Master's School. People who come to the river towns look for charm. Charm is our greatest asset. New buildings don't always have charm. Thank you.
Thank you.
You don't have to use eloquent as Larry, but to put this in context, it's actually part of the vision plan foresaw, recommended the creation of a historic district in downtown. There were actually three, probably Belden, Lower Clinton, and downtown. The beginning of this is going to be the application for the Aqueduct Historic District, of which 100 Main would be a part, but all the buildings, all the properties, examination of all the properties abutting the aqueduct on both sides between Broadway and Main Street. Ultimately, then, with a lot of work to document the other buildings on the other side of Main Street, that district could be expanded. But the initial goal, which is already pretty ambitious, is to create this aqueduct district to, again, manage change along the aqueduct and look at this collection of buildings that still survive that tell a story about a different era in Dobbs Ferry, the kind of formative era that people who are, the increasing traffic on the aqueduct will enjoy. And as Larry pointed out, it's not about freezing it. Like my buildings, have gone through a series of evolutions. I took stucco off a couple of them and, uncovered the original siding, which I had to repair. I left stucco. I stuccoed one of them, which is concrete block and so on. It's evolved, but it's kept that historic character of the essential core buildings. And I'll be back with a presentation more comprehensive, and I hope to not chew up too much time. If you want to schedule a separate time for that, it's probably a 15 or 20-minute presentation on which looks at this whole historic district, trying to lay the groundwork, since you will be the people evaluating and making recommendations to the large number of buildings that survive from 1900, some from earlier, but it's a huge number of core buildings along Main Street and along the aqueduct still survive from the 1900 Sanborn map when we started looking closely. And so these little vernacular buildings, which there were many more of, there are still some surviving ones, which are, to my mind, great candidates for resurrection. There are people looking at some of them right now to convert to galleries and other kind of businesses that these kind of historic buildings seem to generate, and that attract the kind of people who want to do those kind of businesses. So we'll be back, and we'd like to ask for a continuance of this, of the application for this district, and hope that we can do it when there's, it can be made available to the public. Thanks again.
Thank you. If I understand this correctly, the intent is to propose a entire district of along the aqueduct. I know that we've all been talking about this for a few years now, since a number of projects first came on the horizon for our board, for the village, the projects abutting the aqueduct, with varying degrees of success, and I think we all would like that. I mean, our board welcomes that tremendously. I think everyone in the community will ultimately benefit from that. What I'm having, and and when we get to that point, if we're talking about this particular property as a component of the narrative, then we're talking about it in a very different way. It's one very small part of a whole, and as a small part, it contributes to something larger. Which has me a little, I'm a little, the current proposal is a bit confusing because it's, as I understand it, it is to take this particular building and designate it as a historic structure. And I think that list that you read of the other buildings in the village that have that designation, I don't see this building on the same level as those other ones. And we did investigate this issue because I wanted to find out more about this building, and we wanted to know, we were sort of hoping it would go in a certain direction. It turns out that from what we learned from the preservationist report, it really isn't that. I did sympathize with the argument you made during your presentation, probably almost a year ago now, about it being a contributing component of some larger thing. And I think if we look at it in that context, then that makes a lot of sense, to me at least. I think if we're looking at it as a building that merits individual designation, I think it's a tougher case to make. And I'm not sure if tonight is just about starting a conversation on this and a number of other buildings, then we can continue to have that. But if the intention is to designate this as an independent historic structure, well, we can have that conversation too. I'm less. It's a harder case to sell for a number of reasons. I think everyone's aware of, despite how much you like it, and despite how much. How playful it is.
Is there a site map with all of the contributing buildings that are intended to be listed? Has one been composed yet?
What
A site map?
Steve is working on it, yeah.
So that's your presentation?
I did a presentation earlier, but I've augmented that presentation to look at the larger context, and I want to talk about the what's called a cultural landscape, which is a National Park Service term, and show you other examples of the application, where you're saving vernacular buildings. And the whole point is that maybe none of the buildings by themselves qualifies as a.
And I fully understand that, because I've heard you speak about this before.
But as a collection.
But I'm asking, has the collection been identified, or future collection pieces been identified?
Sure, yeah.
So that,
No,
there's 27 buildings that are all going to contribute to this district, or whatever that number might be.
Yeah, yeah, and that includes the larger district. There'll be, I've made an initial survey of what's contributing and non-contributing buildings in the district, which gives, different status when you're considering changes. And, so I have a theory that, a number of us have been working on this and looking at those structures that survive, and the condition and the integrity and so on and so forth. So this is sort of the first, this has come up, obviously it keeps coming up. It's the first thing that's shown up on the screen. It's, our point is to try to see it in that context, and that's the point we'll be making at the planning board, at the board of trustees, and in front of you, but you have the first cut on the, considering historic districts and making recommendations.
guess in my eyes, it's, when you talk about the building, you talk about adaptive reuse, right?
Yes.
You can't force the property owner to adaptively reuse what is on there, right? They have to make that,
Yeah.
right? So I guess in my eyes, it brings upon the question of, has it survived? In its current state, has it survived, or is it simply just a structure that has not been maintained over the years that is simply beyond for use?
Well, actually,
So-
it gives a good structural report. I mean, we had it.
I understand, the bones may be, but the siding may not, right? So, there's other elements and interpretation of whether it is a surviving structure that adds to the character, or whether it's simply
Yeah.
a structure that has just sat there for so long that
Well,
it
it's better
doesn't,
than my barn did.
well, okay.
You know.
But you chose as the property owner to reuse and
Yeah.
adaptively
Well, the
redo
point
that,
is
so
there
it could
are
sit there for
some-
another 40 years and not.
We can provide, there are people interested in doing something with this barn right now. It's just a question of how things play out.
So the last thing, the only comment I wanted to make is, I totally agree with the recommendation of the OCA's historical district and regulations pertaining zoning, density, relationship of any building abutting the aqueduct and maintaining it. And it's all about regulated change, managing change.
Yeah.
Repurposing, it's important,
Yeah.
but has to be in balance with what Brandon is describing. It's, financial feasibility of sites. So keeping that in mind, I'm all open to have an intelligent discussion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that one of the points of encouraging this culture of preservation is to discourage demolition by neglect, which is an intentional process. Not,
I agree.
make no mistake, it's not an unintentional process.
Understood.
I am concerned that the barn as a structure is not considered important. Don't think of the barn as an empty shell, but see it repurposed into a usable building. Then it will assume an importance equal to the other buildings. The barn is an important architectural structure, essential in our country's history. When people come upon a barn, they begin to think about what happened there and how it contributed to the development of Dobbs Ferry. We know barns are not important to us now because we live in apartments and we don't, and modern houses, but the barn was an essential part of this village's history. I have a barn on our property and it's delight. It was a stable and it's been repurposed as an art studio for my life. So I really am concerned that we integrate barns and outbuildings because they are very important and they can be important again if they're repurposed.
Bruce Richards, 152 Main. And I wasn't prepared to talk tonight, but the ruling or the decision on 75 Main to not confuse the old building with the new building and connect the two in such a way that the one is more consumed than enabled, can that sort of ruling also be applied to the barn and 100 Main? Because 100 Main is just sort of a 50s block. I mean, and I'm not saying the barn's great, but it's just the proportions and everything was what I've always been concerned with, because if this sort of.
Us too, I wrote a memo to the Board of Trustees with exactly that thing. I mean, the issue is that application isn't before us anymore.
Okay.
So I sympathize, we all sympathize, we expressed that opinion to the Board of Trustees. I don't know the status of that At the
That
moment,
cannot be resurrected?
you can always have a new proposal to come back to us. So I can't say, I just don't know. Sorry, it's not that I can't say, it's that I don't know what the issue is. So, I mean, that you know, this is how we see things, this is how we look at the things that come before us, and I think we're all appreciative of work that people put in to create these things, because we would like to do them if we could. So we rely on everyone in the community who wants to put in that effort, and we'll support you, and we will try to make this thing intelligent and worthwhile, and something that provides both a guideline to applicants and some protection for the community for some issues like, you know, sort of intentional neglect and you know, sort of oversized additions and sort of poorly conceived projects, you know, and so we're all for it, and our intention is to make this one work a little bit faster than the current pilot scheme in another area of the village. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Actually, I just have a question. Do we have any sort of rules or laws in this village that say that if a person does not maintain their property, the village steps in and takes over? I mean, are people allowed to let their house stay, just rot away?
Are you,
You know what I'm saying?
there, no. It's
There's
the
no-
straight
there's
answer. I mean,
no rule.
you're talking about eminent domain for neglect.
Right, right. Is there such a thing? She's talking about condemnation. It is to a point, like Rudy's, wasn't Rudy's that show?
Please use microphone.
You understand?
No, I mean,
Anyway,
you're
you're saying
leading to
there is-
something.
There is no law. In other words, we could allow our house just to rot away,
No,
right?
there is a law.
There is a law?
There's a maintenance law.
Yeah.
And it says what?
Well, Ed wants to get more help
Please
too.
use microphone.
There is a maintenance law.
But it's a fine base.
Huh?
It's fine based.
Peggy asked
Please
about,
step up by the mic stand, and
How
cameras do not go there.
Okay.
All right, so how big is the fine? If they don't, on the north, the south side of that building, they just let it fall apart. There's pieces of wood falling off now. All it needs is a nail. Put, nail the thing back in, and there's
Yeah.
some water, I'm sure water's flowing.
they're,
They want it to rot away.
you can issue fines, but they're not, the truth is they don't have a whole lot of bite. And the other communities have, they don't have a lot of bite. They're not significant fines. There are other communities where the fine is significant, encourages people vigorously to repair or correct the problem. In Dobbsbury, we do not have a very robust fine for violating. They're not, but you get fined and you absorb it.
Well, we were saying tonight, it's just a miracle that hasn't cost a fine.
We get it. You don't have to. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll, is this an application or just as a pre?
It's like a pre-submission. and
Okay,
then-
so no action to be taken.
Right.
All right, but we'll see everyone in a few weeks.
September, everybody's.
Yeah, but it's
telling me
That's fine, we won't, so whenever you're ready.
September, we can get something.
We won't do it without you, so you gotta show up to provide the application. Motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Yeah, your seconds.
September.
Unanimous. Okay, thanks. Night.